Welcome, MHD Fam, episode 3 here. We have two amazing special guests. So we're going to check in with Lee, and then we're going to do the honors and jump right in. Lee, how you doing?
Bienvenidos a todos. Hello, everybody. Welcome, MHD family. Brandon can't catch me slipping today. We're having a decent hair day today. But yes, we have some wonderful guests on. I had the privilege of inviting them. I've had the privilege of working with them, and hopefully you guys will enjoy them as much as I do. So further ado, I'll let these lovely ladies introduce themselves.
Go for it, Leash.
Well, first of all, I wanted to say I got distracted because your nickname Lee, that Brandon called you, my son's nickname is Lee because his name is Leon, named after his great-grandmother Leonore, her middle name. Oh. So that got me distracted. All right, let me introduce myself instead of my son. Hi, everybody. Alicia Wolfe. I am an educator through and through. I've stepped into leadership. As you can see, family is a big part of my life. So I started with family, my son, but I have done special education leadership. I started with my two lovely co-founders at Innovageous, which is my company. I started there all the way back in camp as a camp counselor. Yeah, that was a long time ago. As a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, then being a counselor at 18, so that's a little bit about my background, my personal background. But I love to be special education, to be in special education. I love to work with children, and at like the core of all of my values are, serving children and inclusion, being there for kids. So I'm really excited to be here today talking about mental health because, you can't be there for kids if you're not there for yourself.
Joanna Hightower. I'm going to go with, I'm an educator too, through and through. Started my educator journey as a middle school and high school teacher. I taught French, Spanish, and math, which is a crazy combination. No, I can't speak French, so don't ask. But somehow I did teach that in the middle school level.
There's a will, there's a way.
Absolutely, right? The videos were essential every night before, as I prepared for the next day's teaching. I went on to be a school vice principal, then a school principal, and then a charter school superintendent CEO. And I left that realm to, co-found Innovageous with Shira and Alicia. And like Alicia mentioned, we met, on the kids' streets at summer camp. Back in 2005, it had to be where we were supporting and, having a great time with 400 kids from Philly, at Girard College. And, we would just have the most fantastic, kind of summer camp experience for kids, way back then. And here we are today, as consultants and working with schools across the country. So we're super excited to be with you all today.
You heard those receipts? You heard that, right? I just love it. Don't mind me. You guys know me. I'm excited. Brandon, I don't want to start because I always do with questions, so I'm going to give it to you for once to just start it.
There's a lot. There's a lot. First of all, thank you so much for making the time and being here. Just you guys' support and energy towards helping kids and the community in general. That's huge for everybody around and what we like to do here at MHD. So I'm jumping right in. I've been doing my research on the website. I'm jumping right into what I was talking about before, the laugh cards. I need to talk about it. We need to share with the MHD fam what you guys do and these laugh cards, because I think everybody can benefit from downloading a laugh card, printing it out, having one in your desk, your wallet, like we talked about. So where did that kind of start? And tell me more about that.
Sure. We we heard from a lot of teachers and school leaders, a lot of people in general, that self-care was something that they needed to learn more about. I mean, in the past year or so, but even beyond that, but especially in the past year, as we were working with schools, working across the country, no matter where we were going, the underlying theme was, we're so overwhelmed. We're overwhelmed. We need to figure out how to take care of ourselves. And so we were thinking, like, what's a way to help people come up with ideas to like take care of themselves? Not necessarily big grand gestures, but simple ideas to take care of yourself. And how can you remember it easily? And so we were like, all right, let's make an acronym. Let's make something that's catchy, but that also is helpful. And so our laugh card is an acronym, what's your plan to laugh today? So if you have that acronym, L stands for love yourself, always, 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 what are some ways to love yourself? I know that, you get caught up in like saying bad things to yourself, and it drains you, man. It strains you and drains you. And, I heard recently somebody said to me, like, would you say that to a loved one? Would you say what you just said to yourself? Would you say that to a loved one? And my answer is always no. Like, I would never say some of the things that I was thinking, like, wow, you're just not good at being a mom. Wow, you're just terrible at that. Or you're never going to learn how to do that better. Or that person over there is doing it better. So I was like, you know what, we gotta love ourselves. And so the first thing, that L stands for love yourself, and flipping the inner monologue that you say to yourself, and really asking, would you say that to a loved one? Probably not. So say the opposite of what you just said to yourself to balance it out or to make it better. And then the other ones, and all of these are based on research, on ways that support you feeling better about yourself and taking care of yourself. Second one is just applying boundaries, and saying yes all the time is something that I think, especially in the education field, we do a lot. Like, we want to help our kids, but sometimes we have to apply a lot of boundaries, like say, no, I can't do that. Or, after 6, I'm not answering emails. And that's something that A stands for. U is use your body, move around, exercise. And there's lots of different ways to do that. I personally, and I know a lot of people in education, because we were home for a little bit. I got a Peloton. So I'm moving my body as much as I can motivate myself to, like, just because it's in the house doesn't mean I'm doing it more, but I'm trying. I'm really trying.
What is that? What is that?
Peloton is a bike.
Oh, it's like one of the bikes you can like put.
Yeah, thank you. No, the Peloton is one brand of bike, but there's so many out there. Just they have like exercise classes and all that, but yoga, those kinds
God
of
bless
things.
you. I can't do cycling. Cycling is
I thought that wasn't for me until I tried it, and then I fell in love. Other things I do, I mean, I just had a newborn, so I try to get out of the house all the time. So
thanks to you and your baby.
Thank you. Where am I in this? Oh, G, gratitude. My gratitude journal. I have a gratitude journal, but you don't need a gratitude journal. Do you have a gratitude journal, Leonore?
I have a guided one. So it has like different prompts or like little quotes that you can kind of like, guide through. But I also have like my digital journal where it's just like, gotta blurt it out. So shout out to gratitude journals.
Mm-hmm. There's other ideas too. I mean, I sometimes when I get a chance to sit around the table with my family, we really appreciate each other, and we like to say little things that we appreciate about each other, and that's important to me. Saying thank you to all the people who made our food and made our food happen around the table, that's important to me too. So, and then that H, have fun. What we're doing today, hopefully. I've had a lot of laughter. Have fun, laugh, sing, dance, do those things. So that laugh card is really important.
Ladies and gentlemen, my homework assignment for you is make sure you go to their website. The link is going to be in our little description of Spotify. Make sure you go and find this laugh card. I think this is like the most important thing of like all time. And like you said, it's very simple structures. It's not like you have to invest a lot of time, money, or energy into it. Just like, if you have the time, 2 minutes for yourself? You can do your laugh. Look at that. I wish I could zoom in on you real quick. Like,
I got my laugh card. It's right here. It's always on my desk.
And it's color coded. It's mad cute. Like,
it's here for you, right? It's just here to remind us of what's important. I think what's also really awesome is that as a company, we not only, share out the resource, but we've been really intentional about, in any PDs or anything that we do with folks and teachers and educators and families, is that we check in, right? We check in with people. We're like, how are you doing? Lee can probably speak to this, right? Like, we start every session with like, how are you, right? How are you feeling today on the sheep scale or this scale or the taco scale? It doesn't matter, right? But like, starting off with a legit check-in on like, how are you doing today, right? Because, in the space, sometimes no one ever asks another person, like, how are you today, right? Like, how are you feeling? That's a real question to ask, right? And even that moment can make someone feel better. And second to that, we've, started self-care events. Like this week, we just hosted a stress reliever event where we went to smash or Rage Philly, and we smashed a car. And so we invited leaders from across Philly to, get some stress out, right? And some people don't see that as stress relief, but other people do. And man, they were like so happy to be like, I used my body, right? Like, I just was like, I had to go in on this car with a few bats, but or whatever it was that we had. There was so much stuff, but just relieving the stress, right? Like getting it out, screaming, right? Like all of those things. We've also put together or organizing events that promote self-care, and it is the partner of the laugh card.
I love it. Brandon, when we get in a car, or when we get in like
I'm
a
gonna
TV,
say the next one we got to get out there. I need to smash a car.
little trip to Philly. I don't mind getting out of Massachusetts for a little bit.
Sounds amazing.
I love it. I kind of want to turn us back into more of what you ladies dive into, just so we can kind of highlight and see the correlation between what you do with mental health. And like I said, I've luckily had the privilege to have you ladies firsthand, so I already love all the content you ladies, oh Lord, educate us on. And that's why I have you here, because I feel like a lot of us can really value from the education and knowledge you ladies have with everything, regardless if it's towards teaching or, like you even said, you can do it to the general aspect of our world. So with my experience, I feel like you ladies did a great job of breaking down what intersectionality is. There's been a few times I've tried bringing it up to other people, and they're kind of like, what is that? How does that relate? So if one of you could kind of break it down for our listeners, I would truly appreciate that.
So Kimberly Crenshaw really, coined the term intersectionality, right? And so intersectionality is really the theory of like, what's the interconnected nature of like race, class, gender, right? And how do these systems or identities come together, right? To disadvantage a person, right? Or to discriminate on a person, right? And so, an example of that could be, I'm brown, right? I am, a woman, right? And so some of these things that define me, right, coupled together, right, create, they kind of overlap, right, and create this system of potential discrimination or disadvantage, right? And, when we think of like what are dominant, characteristics or identities, right, in our society, it would be like being a white male, right? And so being a female, right, is already, okay, less, not a dominant characteristic, but now when you couple that with I'm woman and I am brown, right, or I am woman, brown, and maybe not a college graduate, right, like all of these things combined just create this, bigger system of disadvantage.
I appreciate you so much. And I just want to make a quick throwback. I remember when you ladies had us do this activity where it's like, you're going to get so much money based off if you have these main identities or not. And I remember, I think, John, I was in your group. I'm looking at it and it's like able-bodied, able-mind, male, college education. And there was like a few others. Brandon, I'm telling you, I think I had like $2. People in my group had like 8 or 10 because I think the max was like 10 or 11. But I was just like, wow, I guess I'm really broke. So it's just interesting to really see that at play where, you kind of put it in that monetary value where it's just like, yeah, if you have all of these, this is how much value or advantage you have compared to if you don't have this. And I feel like it does make a very big play on identity and knowing what are your identities. So how would you encourage someone to explore what their identities are if they don't have that previous knowledge or exposure to intersectionality and different identities?
I think that's a great question, right? And so I think there's a space where, you're really in the space of becoming aware, right? In the space of really like learning about yourself, right? And getting this awareness so that you are, so that how you present yourself to the world, right? How you show up. I would encourage, folks to really like dig deep, right? We all can dig deep and figure out people are like, oh, I don't have culture, right? Or I don't have these things. Like, no, you really do, right? And all of the things that make you is part of your identity, right? And so if you're like, look, I'm, Puerto Rican, right? Like, what does that mean to me, right? Like, how does that show up, in my life? How does it show up when I engage with other people? Right? How does it show up when I'm a mom, right? Like, just really breaking down all of the things that make you, right? And, and really, starting to get that awareness and understanding of like, how does it show up, right? Because when I come into a room, like, I want you to see me for all things that I am, right? I want you to see me for being, Puerto Rican and a woman and, a mom. I want you to see these things about me, right? Because they make me who I am. And, and I'm like excited for that, right? And so, to really, really unpack that, I would encourage someone, anyone to like take the time to unpack exactly who you are, right? We all have culture, we have ethnicity, right? We have things like race and some people get funny about that because it's a social construct, right? It's something that was developed, to identify or to categorize folks. But there are so many things that make you. And, the more you dig into that, the better I'm just even going to say the better, right? It's just the more aware you show up to spaces. And, the more aware you are around valuing how other people show up, right? Because I think that's equally as important, right? The more I learn about myself, the more I'm able to accept people for who they are, right? And value them for who they are and how they show up. And also be more empathetic sometimes, right? Because I'm like, you have a journey, you have a story, right? You have a reason, you have a season, right? Like, you're not, there's a reason why. And so that helps me with my own mental health.
How would you encourage others to, embrace their identity and, in a world where sometimes there's a lot of hate and negativity surrounding individuals who want to express a certain way, but are scared to be themselves. And what are some like encouraging words you would have?
You know, it's a challenging time we live in, right? With folks, with social media, with what, you know, people believe you should look like, what you should be like, what career you should have, you know. But I'm encouraged every day that I walk into schools and I'm around kids, because you would be incredibly surprised of how so much more open and, you know, a different lens that our children have on this planet, like our younger children, and, you know, how they see the world. And so, you know, I think my words of encouragement of like, you know, you are enough. You are everything. Okay. Like you are everything that you were created to be. And so like, be okay with that thing, be okay with your greatness, be okay with all things you, because, you know, that's what makes you special. And if you aren't around people who are telling you that, like, get new friends.
Get new friends.
All right. Like, it's okay to say, you know, your season or your time in my life has ended, right? Like, you know, prioritize, apply those boundaries like Alicia just shared with us, right? And say like, you know, there's a time and a space, and, you know, there are plenty of open arms that are ready to embrace you for who you are and how you show up every day. And so, you know, you are enough. Where are my words? I don't know, Alicia, if you have any words, but those are my words.
Well, that's what I was thinking too. I mean, I'm super encouraged by, I mean, there's lots of things that people have to say about social media, but when you don't necessarily have to share all the things about your identity with everybody, because sometimes that can be hurtful. And, you know, that's part of applying boundaries too. But if you can figure out for yourself who your identity is, that's really powerful. And so, you know, there's different parts of your identity that are on the surface. Like you can see somebody walk in the room and you can see some of their identity, but there's pieces of you that are also those hidden pieces of your identity. And social media really helps you connect with other people that have that same identity marker, or however you want to claim it. A piece of you that you can reach out to other people. And even if it's just following another Instagram or following somebody on Facebook that is similar to you, so you can see their perspective and not feel alone, even if you're not quote unquote out yet in some way in that piece of your identity, that's important, because knowing more about your own self is not just about sharing with other people, it's about you feeling confident in your own skin. So, that has been really helpful, especially with pieces of my identity that, you know, I feel like I don't share with people, and I share with some people. At least I can find other people that have similar experiences, even if I'm just following them on Instagram. So that's the biggest piece for me is it's empowering to know yourself. It's incredibly empowering to know yourself and to apply those boundaries and know who you can and can't share with.
That's amazing. And I'd love like how both you guys express like finding your true, facing your identity and identifying yourself and sitting with your emotions. That helps a lot, because then you can kind of see the world and being more understanding, be more appreciative of people around you. You're not judging anymore. Like, I know I've done a lot of reflection, and, you know, high school is a place where, you know, kids go and you just judging everybody. Everyone's mean to everybody. Social media nowadays, it's just all mean. But now, like, as you grow and you learn and you identify and you're learning these things, you're like, why did I do that? Why was I a bully? Why was I mean to that one kid that one day? And like, if you sit back and actually do these things that you guys you ladies are talking about, we can really change the world. So appreciate you guys.
I feel like you both made a very important, how do I say this? Brain fart, of course. I feel like you two mentioned really key things that I feel like as we get older, we tend to forget about. And like Joanna said, like children kind of have a different lens. Children kind of give you a refreshing, like, open-mindedness, like, hey, you could think about it this way, or like, but also, as Brandon said, it's kind of like there's a shift that eventually is just like they start to judge or starts to get very tunnel vision and kind of like close that mind little by little by little. And since you two work with educators, I would love for you two to kind of dive in a little bit of what are some ways adults, whether they're educators or not, can help kids when it comes to their identities and them understanding these processes and about themselves instead of them kind of like judging themselves or like, oh, instead of this or
that. One thing came to mind right away, and I'll do some more thinking about it too as we share. But one thing that came to mind is that we have to let children know that variety, differences is the norm. Nobody is exactly the same, ever. And so if we can let them know, like if we can, let them know the different pieces of us, of our identity that we're willing to share, if we can help them to be able to explore, like, we have this in common, but there's other things that we don't have in common, and that's okay. Even if, like, and I'm thinking, exploring your identity, even if you have an entire class full of children who look the same, they're not the same. And so you can do this even if you have an entire group of kids that may look the same. And so we have to teach our kids that different is the norm. It's not weird or strange, because that's where we start realizing and empathizing. That's where we start saying, oh, I'm not going to judge, because actually everybody has something different about themselves. It's actually normal, quote unquote, to be different, because nobody is exactly the same. And so if you start exploring those different things, whether it's learning differences, different ways that we prefer to learn, different music we prefer to listen to, or different ways that we look, different family structures that we have, all of those things are important for us to help our kids see in each other and to be able to get familiar with, so we're not judging. We shouldn't be judging. We all have something that's different, that's not exactly the same.
Yeah, I think, we had the great opportunity to survey lots of kids in the last year, right? For, as we partner with schools, we always try to get student voice in a lot of the projects that we do with schools. And we surveyed a lot of kids and asked them, like, hey, what can the adults around you, right, do better, right? Especially through such a traumatizing and challenging time. And, one of the biggest things that kids across the country, right, from Cali to Massachusetts, right, would say is just like, listen, right? Like, adults just need to listen. And, that was like an overwhelming message of like, just like ask questions and listen. And so, if I had to like, give some really basic advice to adults, is like, be willing to listen to where kids are coming from, right? And their point of view and their worldview, right? Because, as a middle schooler, or, as you're developing, like, you are developing, or kids are developing their worldview, right? And so, they're having all these thoughts, right? And so this opportunity where kids are just saying, like, ask questions, right? Like, stop telling us, like, just listen to this rant, right? Or this, lecture about this thing, right? Or how the adult sees the world, right? It's just like, listen to my worldview, right? And, ask questions about, like, why I have this view as a 10-year-old, as a 12-year-old, right? So that, more conversation and dialogue can happen with kids. Would be, my go-to is, we need to spend more time listening because you'd be surprised what kids have to say, right? And like how insightful they are. And, their worldview is so different than ours because they have more exposure to the world, right, today than they ever had before, right? The world is at their fingertips with their technology, with their iPads, with their phones, right? When I was a kid, and I don't want to age myself, but, like, there was no cell phone, right? Like, there was none of that. Like, I thought I was somebody because I had a beeper, right? Like, I was like the jam, right? But like, there was no worldview. There was nothing coming about the world through my beeper, nothing, right? And so, the only view of the world was what my family like presented to me, right? What exposure they gave me, and potentially what I saw on TV. But now kids have the world at their fingertips. And so their worldview is developing a lot sooner. And it's really on us to ask questions and listen.
It makes me think of like my old sixth graders, where it's just like, oh my God, y'all know too much.
Yeah, scary.
It is. And I was thinking that, especially for our preteens, and our teenagers, it is like, when you think about brain development, it is time. They are trying to be independent. And that is like, it's prime time for them to be independent, and also to be independent by being social. And so teachers can embrace that, right? Like your teaching style is very different from when you're in the K-5 realm to when you're in the 6-12 realm. And what I've seen some of the most successful teachers do, as I've been coaching and, as a school leader myself, is they embrace that and they help them see how they are the same but different, like that, like we are all humans. We're all lucky to be here together right now during this time in our lives. And we all can empathize. We don't all have to agree necessarily. And that's actually a huge part of being a teenager too, is like protesting, figuring out like what you believe in and what you don't believe in, and then sticking to it no matter what, and then sticking to whatever your friend just said, even if you don't really believe it, but it's because what your friend said, you know what I mean? Like all those different things. But having lessons and valuing differences while also helping them understand how they can be independent. And so all of that really goes back to, teenagers are trying to be independent, but they still need us. They still need us.
Yeah. I know I still need my mother.
I do too.
Definitely having that, asking questions and listening to the kid, it creates that safe space for them to feel comfortable sharing, which goes down the road a long way, because looking back now, it's like, well, my parents didn't listen. They didn't ask questions. They didn't do this. So they don't really care. And that's how kids will kind of think about it. So just creating that safe space is definitely amazing.
Always, especially within like the education system, because you see different scenarios, you see different identities at play, as we said, and it most definitely makes a difference. Like, I know one of the things I used to love hearing when we used to do PDs with you ladies was, we don't know every case. We don't know every story. We don't know every situation. So we don't know if the school's the only safe haven for the student. We don't know what they're experiencing at home. We don't know what's going on internally. So when they come to school, or when they show you like one version, one mask, when we assume, or like you said, just kind of shut down their why, it's like, we don't know what's going on. We're assuming, but for all we know, God forbid, this child could be going through like A through Z right now. We're kind of like, oh yeah, they're just annoyed or being, childish about this. And it's like, no, they're asking for help, or they're reacting a certain way. And I know one thing you ladies most definitely re-emphasized for me was, children are still learning. So this atypical behavior of them goofing off, we don't know if it's them reacting to an initial thing, or this is them acting out for attention. You ladies most definitely allowed me and my colleagues to most definitely be mindful of like, we don't know that why. So ask, be that person you wanted your inner child to hear or have. So it's just like, what did you want to hear when you were in that situation? Did you want an adult to tell you this, or did you want them to be like, okay, like, what's going on? Let me hear you out. So shout out to you guys.
Yeah, it's that space of assuming the best instead of assuming the worst, right? Of a child before you even, or anybody, right? We're so quick to just assume the worst, right? And to Brandon's point, it's like, hey, you know, it's not just in school, right? But it's in life, right? It's creating that space with your own kids or your niece or your nephew, right? Or, just that opportunity to listen, right? Because we know that success in there's research around, like, if you have one real connection with an adult in your childhood, right? Like the probability of your success just like it skyrockets, right? If you can have this one real connection with an adult, right? And, that could be, your big cousin Brandon, right? Or that could be your auntie Lily, right? Like that could be anybody, right? We just have to create this space, right? For, the humans in our lives, right? And, I also think about, and again, I don't want to age myself, but I think about kids that I taught, right, in middle and high school who are 30 today and call me and ask questions, right? And like, they're still like, Miss Hightower or Miss B, like, I was Miss B back then, but it's like, can you just, like, am I thinking about this right? Right. And I'm like, you're calling me 15 years more plus later, right? Just because I created this space for you as a kid, right? To listen, to ask questions. And so, when you create that, adults need that person too, right? Not just kids, right? They need like a real legit person that they can talk to and to ask questions to. I've heard the saying, like, you're only as good as your old head, right? Like it's like, I'm like, did somebody give you that advice, right? Like, who did you talk to that okayed you coming outside like that, right? Or doing that thing, right? Or thinking that was okay. But like, beyond the scope of children, right? Adults need that checkpoint too in their journey. And so
how do we encourage the adults who don't really want to talk about their emotions, don't really want to just kind of mask it by going to work and then coming home and going to bed and then just doing the same thing? Like, how do we get this message to them? Because that is me and Lee's biggest thing. We're trying to get that generation to, accept us for accepting our emotions and expressing. So how do we reach them?
I mean, I think it's that space of community, right? A scenario like this podcast is hopefully, trying to reach out and saying it's okay, right? Like, it's all right to ask questions, to not have all the answers, to lean in, right, on like those key people around you, right? And if those key people aren't there, right, everybody who you call has, maybe isn't saying what you need, like, right, like finding and seeking that out in like-minded individuals, right? Like Alicia mentioned, right? If that's online or if that's in a community or that's in a collaborative, right? Like there are, organizations like yours that are like, hey, like we're here to uplift and be of service and support. I think is a space to start. But if you're an introvert, right? Which is okay too. I'm an introvert, and you have to do some of that soul searching, right? It's really like, committing to finding more out about you, right? And like digging in, right? Digging into your why, right? Like, why, what's my purpose? What am I doing? really unpacking your identity, like we said at the beginning, and really just, becoming more aware of who you are is a beginning step for at least the introvert who's like, I'm not that kind of person who, is all about reaching out and talking to people I don't know. And like, that doesn't feel good to me. And that's okay. It doesn't have to. You can just start digging in on yourself and asking questions of your family, right? The people around you, right? Like, and starting there.
The person you just described is me. That's me. I'm not the person that will like say hi to somebody and I'm like thinking, oh, they just thought I said hi a weird way. I'm not that person. But it made me think about like, what are some of the things that I'm doing, especially in that love yourself category. And one of the hardest times of my life was when I had my first son. And I was really, really down on myself. And I was like, I feel like I don't have anybody. And I did, but it's really, really hard when you're down on yourself to come up with some of these things on your own. And so I remember I kind of became my person. And one of the things that I do now is I have these little magnets on my fridge that have little affirmations. So every time I said something bad, like you're a terrible mom, like, oh my gosh, you just made the horrible decision that your child's going to be scarred for the rest of your life. Or, whether it's in the classroom, wow, you just did that. You're never going to be able to recover from that. Right. I wrote down the opposite of that. And I put it on a magnet and I put on my fridge, or I put on a sticker and I put on my computer, a sticky note. And then I kind of became that person that reminded myself that stuff's not true. So it's like my past self reminded my future self when I was telling things to myself that were bad, like how to love myself. And so that's something that was really powerful for me. And then the other thing that I was thinking of to encourage people to take care of themselves or to reach out is, if you're somebody who feels like you have a person, you should also be like, whether it's through social media, you can do it in other ways. You can text somebody that you haven't talked to in a long time, because you never know if you're that person for somebody else. So that piece is important. If you're somebody who feels like you're stable, then reach out to somebody and say, hey, thinking of you, miss you, this made me think of you. Here's a meme, whatever it is, right? Because you never know if you could be that person for somebody else.
Yeah, my friend actually opened me up to a strategy where, when I'm feeling down or like I'm struggling, I'll reach out to a friend and I'll be like, hey, just checking in. Hope all's well. Let me know if you need to talk. And even though I'm the one that's struggling, it always leads to a great conversation. Like, oh, thank you so much. You'll understand how much this means to me. Like, how are you? And then we just go. And it's just that safe space that we created for each other. So you just know, like, sometimes they might not ask back. Sometimes they might be like, all right, I'm good. And they kind of don't want to open up. But just sending that love means the world to anybody. So great advice.
Like that.
Human connection is known to help not cure, but most definitely be a beneficial factor towards battling any mental illnesses or disorders. So make a connection, your homework, reach out to someone you love that you haven't talked to, or even if you did, just be like, hey, thinking of you, send them a green heart, a little kissy face, a little gift, or the laugh card. If you want to be nice and send them their way, you can do that too. So, I love the fact that you ladies mentioned affirmations, because I'm a big affirmation person myself. And they just kind of changed my life. And I told Brandon that every episode for season 2, I want our guests to repeat affirmations with me, and hopefully our listeners are repeating it with them.
Love it.
So are we ready, ladies?
We're ready.
Yes.
Are you ready, Brandon?
Let's do it.
I was about to say, you're on mute. So one of the affirmations for today is, I am deserving of love.
I am deserving of love.
I'm deserving of love.
Yes. Brandon's always laughing at me because sometimes my affirmations are super long, but it's like, it's needed. It's needed sometimes. You ready for this one, Brandon?
Oh God, let's go.
You're going to see why I'm doing this to him. I am deserving of rest and time.
I am deserving of rest and time. Amen.
Amen. I'm deserving of rest and time.
Thank you. I've been working on Brandon that he needs time to rest.
Mm-hmm.
My man doesn't like to sleep sometimes. So I'm like, yo, Brandon, I need you to take care of you before you can take care of everyone else.
Working on it.
It's a work in progress and we're getting there. It's a practice. You know?
I can be your old head on that one, Brandon. I can tell you how well that's not going to go, dear. As a person who did it for a long time.
The missing factor was me not having my laugh card. So now that I got that, I should be good.
All right.
I'm going to hold you to it. And I'm going to send them an update. Be like, yo, I need you to talk to Brandon. He's not.
I will gladly.
I do have one final question for you ladies, because I'm always curious. From a personal perspective, what was one important or memorable interaction with an adult in your life that helped you be okay with you? That's just like, they really reassured me and helped me understand, like, I'm okay being me. So if you don't mind, could you maybe share a little bit about that one interaction with that memorable adult or influence? I like this. They're thinking. I like these questions.
I am thinking. And I like this question. I also know that, like, because I'm going to say my grandmother, the one that my son is named after, his middle name is Leonore, is my person, because no matter what my interests were, and they varied all over the place. It was, I was into dictionary. I used to love to read the dictionary. She encouraged that. She was like, great, go for it. I'm like, okay, who likes to read the dictionary? I don't know. I do. All the way to, like, I had like my goth phase, to my, I was really into horseback riding, to, like, I was all over the place as a kid. I like to explore my options, right, before I became my adult person. She was always there. She was always there encouraging me. It didn't matter what it was just because it was me. And because of that, I felt like, when I had really hard times, I could go to her and say, hey, this is happening. What should I do? And she never judged or anything. And so my grandma was my person. But I'll say that my family in general, like, I have a bunch of siblings. I have siblings that I go to all the time. So between those people, I know I was supposed to stick to one, but I don't have one family unit. One family unit. Those are my people.
I love that.
Well, I grew up in, a very traditional Puerto Rican household. And if you follow, like, LeJuan James on,
I love him.
Okay, right, on social media, he highlights, which was very real to me growing up, the very critical nature of growing up in with a Hispanic mom, right? And so, as a young girl growing up, my mom was very critical. She is the quintessential Puerto Rican mom who is like, your hair, what's happening with your skin? She was, you're getting a little fat. Like, she would say all of the things. Okay. And that is very common in Hispanic moms, to be very critical, in particular of their daughters. My brother got away with murder, but my mom was on my case 24/7 about everything, right? And so, that made me very insecure as a young person, because, she would just be like, you didn't wash your face, you got that pimple, right? Like, she would just push all the time. And so she's like the person who, in that, right, didn't necessarily lift me to say like, I'm good with being me. But what made me good with being me, having that experience, were all of the kids that looked up to me and all of the kid love that I've gotten in all of my journeys, right? And all of the kids I've taught or all the kids I've served, you know, those hugs, those genuine, like, Miss Hightower, thank you. The cards, they get all of those moments taught me that like, it was dope to be me. And those comments that my mom made, right? And I forgive her for all of those things, right? And, you know, because I recognize that she had her own traumas, right? And I'm okay with that, right? I wasn't when I was younger, but I'm okay now as an adult. I've learned to grow through that. I also was like I'm good, right? Like, I'm okay with all of the things that make me, right? And I'm, you know, and like all of the kids that I've served have given me that green light to be like, Miss Hightower, like you good, you're good. You know, we respect your gangster, right? Like we're good with you being you, and allow me to be good with me in my journey. And now me and my mom we're best friends, right? Like that is my bestie to, you know, till forever. But, you know, we've had the conversation and, you know, she's like, that's just how we were raised, right? And so like what it teaches me today is like, I'm a mother of a daughter and I'm like, that won't be me. Right? Like, I won't do that to my daughter. So I don't know if I answered that question, but like.
Jo, that was beautiful. That was beautiful.
Genuine, right? Like my honest me.
You brought me back to my childhood because I'm like, dang, that sounds like my grandmother. And my mother a little bit, but also with just more communication. Like, me and my best friends, like you guys have seen me, my mother, like, love her. Very different individuals at the end of the day. But I was like, wow, she's really put into a T. Like, yep, I saw that growing up. It was like, listen, the girls, mira, what you wear, how your hair looking, mira, un grifo, mira eso, no. Go back, go fix it, you know, a little slap on the head. What do you do? You know?
Oh, 100%, right? It's like, what do you think you got on? Or you know, you can't do it. You know, what did you say, right? Like, it was all just very critical all the time. And so, like, again, I'm good with it now. I think, you know, and I thank her for a lot of it, right? Because I'm like, it made my backbone really strong. And you can say anything to me, and I'm like, oh, okay. Right? Like, I heard worse from my mama, honey, and she loves me, right? Like, so I'm okay. You know, but you know, it is just part of the journey.
It is. Thank you, both of you. I was just like loving it both because you guys both shared very relatable stories. Because I love my kids. Like, I will always say my kids were my anchor when I was teaching with them. Like, they held me down. They really let you. Like I always say, if kids like you, they like you. They don't like you, they're gonna let you know, like, yo, So it's just very grateful for those moments. But it's also like my siblings, like my little brother, my world. We fight sometimes, but it's just like, I know I'm safe to go to him and be like, hey, I know you're younger than me, but like, can you hear me out real quick? I just need to kind of process this thought real quick, and then you let me know, and also vice versa. So I want to say thank you for sharing that, because I think hopefully a lot of our listeners will be able to relate to that and hopefully reflect on their own situations and their own important people. And hopefully you guys will reach out to them and say thank you and send some gratitude to them. So another homework assignment for y'all if you're listening. And if you made it all the way to the end of this episode, that's your homework again.
As always, reach out to the ones you love, reach out to those who may need a hand right now, and also set boundaries for yourself. You know, we all can't take care of the world, but we can be there for somebody. So again, thank you so much, ladies, for coming on. And this was an amazing episode. I have to do some self-reflection and identity. I got to get my laugh card ready. And we're definitely going to be in touch and hopefully have you guys on in the future as well, just to, you know, stay in touch. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. You know, Alicia does a great job of posting, you know, stuff with the laugh card on our Instagram and our Facebook. So you can follow us at Innovageous. And that's on Instagram or Facebook, or, we're also on LinkedIn. But, you can always get some positive messages. I know she said, Alicia shouted out like, hey, sometimes somebody online can be that positive message. Hopefully you can get that from us too. But follow us. We'll be sending out positive energy and self-care messages as much as we can, because it's important.
Yeah.
For sure. I just found both of you guys on LinkedIn and on Instagram. So MHD Fam, we will be sharing their information and the links in the description of the show. So definitely follow that page so you guys can get your self-love and messages from them too.
Bless yourself. I'm a firsthand experiencer. It is worth it, I promise.
But we used to tell the kids, right? Like, kiss your brain, right? Like, it's all good. Give love to yourself, right? I used to always tell it to my kids. That was awesome. Kiss your brain for that.
Kiss your brain. Yes, I did that too.
I do that. I like that. Kiss the brain.
Kiss the brain. For both of you, kiss your brains and your hearts because they're in the right place. So, way to go.
We appreciate you so much.
Thank you. MHD Fam. Good night.
Adios.